And now, from the Room 111 studios, it's Hacking Engagement with James Sturdivant.
Hey there, listener. Welcome back to the Hacking Engagement podcast. And I thought about this. I'm going to put out an episode on New Year's Day. Now, I don't know how many people will listen on New Year's Day, but obviously you can listen after New Year's Day. But I'm hoping some people listen on New Year's Day because I'm really excited about this episode. You know, I think some people might be just kind of like, I am not doing anything in regard to my job. I'm just going to watch some football and chill out. Some of you might be hungover. But here's the thing, man. I really wanted to put this out because I love this episode. Man, I love this episode. I'm one of these optimistic people. I love to set up New Year's resolutions. And so last night, my wife and I, we have some friends up every New Year's Eve, and we make this big deal about our New Year's resolutions for the year. It's cheesy, but awesome. Recently, I've been reading this book by Tom Brady, you know, the guy that plays quarterback for the Patriots. It's really interesting. It's part A&E biography and part workout book, and he's talking about longevity in football and the workout routine he does, the diet he does, and it's motivated me tremendously. So I wanted to put something out to you all to try to motivate you to form better relationships with your students this year. And man, I love this episode. I want you to buckle up because you're going to love it too. I'm very confident about that. Hey, so get this, listener. My publisher contacts me and says, I love the way Hacking Engagement is selling. How about doing 50 more? I was all over it like a cheap suit. So the name of the book is Hacking Engagement Again, 50 Teacher Tools That Will Make Students Love Your Class. And it's going to be available on Amazon's virtual shelves in the late summer of 2017. In the meantime, if you're looking for more teacher empowerment resources, as always, visit hacklearning.org. Now let's get back to the solutions part of the Hacking Engagement podcast. To start this conversation up, I'm going to read a page from my first book, You've Got to Connect. Now picture this. It's Friday night and you've invited some friends along to the football game at the high school where you teach. Your students are out in force. They're only marginally interested in what's taking place on the field. Mostly they are consumed with socializing. The boys are doing all kinds of posturing and the girls are dressed to attract the boys' attention. The majority of the students aren't even in the stands, but milling about, flirting, gossiping, huddling, watching. Your friends are unnerved by this rabble. Many of the youngsters are dressed like geeks, skaters, gangsters, hipsters, emos, mean girls, or some other cultural tangent. Your companions have been considering having a child, and this whole scene gives them pause. The young wife is getting intimidated, and the young husband's adrenaline is starting to percolate. The kids acknowledge you in loud, aggressive voices. Hey, Mr. Sturdivant! They barely notice your anxious friends. Their focus is on you, but only briefly. Then it's back on each other. The wife remarks, how do you face these kids every day? Have you been part of such a scenario? Questions about how you can survive with those kids might be familiar, particularly if you teach middle or high school. You might answer the question with great pride. After all, you are doing a job that a lot of adults would find intimidating or maddening to the point where they may become violent. Unlike your anxious friends, you, however, are as cool as the other side of the pillow. These are your kids. You know what they're trying to do. You see it all the time. Or maybe not. Maybe you feel embarrassed and uncomfortable. You might be sorry you brought your friends to the setting. You might mumble some answers such as, oh, I just grin and bear it, or it gets worse every year, or fortunately I can retire soon. Plenty of adults, including teachers, hold the younger generation, especially when gathered in packs, in low or close to low regard. Guess what? Many adults for many generations have held younger generations in low regard. You can choose to continue the pattern, or you can look through the behaviors and accept the person. I have another quote for you. And this one is awesome. So here we go. I see no hope for the future of our people if they are dependent on the frivolous youth of today. For certainly all youth are reckless beyond words. When I was young, we were taught to be discreet and respectful of elders, but the present youth are exceedingly disrespectful and impatient of restraint. Now that quote might seem like a contemporary statement. It comes from 700 BCE, Athens, Greece, by a poet called Hesiod. And that's 200 years prior to Athens' golden age. This was a society that was on its way up. And yet, that's the way some felt in this city about young people. This frustration with young people, there's nothing new in it. It's my belief that this frustration with students often comes from two sources. Number one, there is this lack of perspective appreciation on the part of teachers for their students. And number two, a lot of times it's nostalgia. So I want to dive into both of those today. First of all, this concept of perspective. I do this often when I go to present, and it's incredibly enlightening for the audience. I ask the teachers to put up their hand if they graduated with a 3.0 or better GPA. Almost everybody puts their hands up. I ask how many participants played a varsity sport. A lot of people will put up their hands. I finally asked them how many were in National Honor Society. Again, a lot of people put up their hands. And many people put up their hands on all three prompts. And then I challenged them, do you know kids that couldn't put up their hands for any of those prompts? In other words, a lot of times teachers really liked school. One of the main reasons they became a teacher is they enjoyed the whole process. There are plenty of your students who don't feel that affection for school. Going to school every day for them is a drudgery or a scary experience. So when you start thinking about, well, why aren't these kids more enthusiastic? They probably don't have the life you had. That's an important perspective, an important paradigm shift that teachers have to make. Okay, so picture this. You walk into the teacher's lounge and one of your colleagues is complaining about kids today. That is a loaded phrase to start a sentence. Please be very tuned in to that prefix to a sentence. And so this person goes off on a rant of some sort. I want you to understand something that's really struck me as I've worked my way through my teaching career, is I'm amazed by how sometimes my colleagues who complain about kids are not necessarily that old. And some of them are complaining about things need to go back to the way things used to be. And it's like, hold on, man, I was a teacher when you were a kid, and kids aren't that different. Now, what I want to do here is I want to just read a little bit from my book. Again, we're attacking this concept of nostalgia, and I hope this helps you. Always remember kindergarten with fondness. I can't look at the 5-year-old Jimmy. Yes, there is a picture on my show notes of me at age 5, without feelings of a September Tuesday in 1966 washing over me. Full of excitement and feeling like a big boy, I headed off to a world of adventure. I loved the independence of the walk to school. I had fun at school. I was popular. The teacher liked me. I felt like part of something big and wonderful. As I look back, I have only positive memories of pleasant times in those early years of school. I was clueless at the time, but now I see that plenty of circumstances out of my control contributed to the happiness. I was a remarkably well-positioned member of a privileged class as far as success in school. I had all the right boxes checked. Male, check. White, check. Christian, check. Athletic, check. Lived with both biological parents, check. My mom and dad were happily married, check. Heterosexual, check. Financially stable home life, check. Fairly intelligent, check. But things weren't so rosy for classmates who weren't able to check all those boxes, which included a lot of kids. In 1966, our school system emphasized conformity. Granted, you couldn't control your genetics or your parents, but other variables were a different matter. Kids came to school well-groomed, All males were required to wear slacks, not jeans. All shirts had to have a collar. The high school boys were not permitted to have facial hair, or long hair for that matter. And this is public school, mind you. If you were female, wearing pants was not acceptable. Most girls wore knee socks with their dresses or skirts. Discipline was based on fear. Corporal punishment was the cornerstone. It was not uncommon for adult staff members to threaten male students and the occasional outgoing young female. The threats were not idle. Sexism was the norm. Young females who wanted to become professionals in business, medicine, law, or politics were not given much, if any, encouragement. High school girls who got pregnant just disappeared. Schools let them know in subtle or sometimes not so subtle ways that they no longer were welcome. The young baby daddy often went on with his plans and suffered no repercussions as far as the school was concerned. It's easy to get sentimental about the good part of my innocent good old days back in primary school. But folks, if you couldn't check all the boxes that I checked, you just weren't taking that seriously. I've learned to mistrust such nostalgia and temper it. In reality, I have no desire to go back to that era. I prefer diversity to conformity. Now listen, man, nostalgia tends to include elements of sugarcoating and reinvention. See the past realistically. Even more important, become keenly aware of moments when it disconnects you from present students. If you look at a student and wish for her to be more like you when you were a kid, you're not accepting her. You and your students are citizens of the present. True, you might long for the mother country back when you were in high school or some other glorious past moment, but you're here now, and that's not changing. Furthermore, your students are quite content in the present. It's all they know, and teaching is all about them. Okay, finally, it is time for me to give you your New Year's Day exercise. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to examine your bias about the behavior, attitudes, and interests of this present generation of kids. In particular, attributes you hate. I want you to make a list of things that bug you. Include everything about this age group or this generation that you find abhorrent, appalling, or just annoying. Now, I love kids. I love interacting with students. I had no problem making this list. My list was long. Here's my list, and I'll have an image of this on my show notes. Number 1, their music. 2, clothes. 3, their manners. 4, their lack of respect. 5, their slang. 6, their work ethic. 7, the way they treat each other. Drama. 8, their priorities. 9, their profanity. 10, their piercings and tattoos. And number 11, their parents. Their helicopter parents. So I went through that list. I have 11 things on my list. I want you to do the same. And once you have completed that list, things get interesting. I want you to take a pen or hit the delete button on your computer, and I want you to eliminate everything on that list that you probably don't have a lick of control over. Their music? Come on, man. Their clothes? Really? Their parents? Zero. So when you start eliminating things on that list of things that bug you about your students, you're going to end up with a small list of things that you can actually control. Now, the thing that's maddening, the thing that separates us from our students, are those things that we don't have control over, are often the things that we complain about the most in the teacher's lounge. And when you complain about those things, it puts up barriers between you and your kids. I want you this year, in 2018, to focus on the things that you have control on, the things that you can influence about your students, and just drop the other stuff. If you do that, in the words of a famous Ohioan by the name of Neil Armstrong, it will be a giant leap for mankind. So here we are at the What You Can Do Tomorrow section. He's making a list and checking it twice. Okay, I gotta stop that, man. The holidays are over, but that's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to make a list of all the things that bug you about your present students. And then go through that list and eliminate the stuff you don't have any control over. Focus on the things that you do have control over, and then make a little action step on how you might be able to help a young person overcome an important hurdle that might hold them back in life. Hey, I want to tell you something, man. Letting go of things that you don't have control over is so darned healthy. It also will really help bond you with students. Hey, good luck tomorrow. This year, New Year, 2018. Good luck in 2018 engaging your kids.
Show notes for this episode can be found at jamesalansturdivant.com. If you enjoy Hacking Engagement, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes.